بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد
وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف. Alhamdulillah, we have tawfiq to continue our study of Surah Sad. We reflected on the verses about Prophet Dawood ala nabiyina wa alihi wa alayhi salam, and we can now move on to the story of Prophet Sulaiman. But I thought maybe it's good to mention a false story about Prophet Dawood ala nabiyina wa alayhi salam that some non-Muslims have mentioned, and a modified or more modest version of it, unfortunately, some Muslims also have said. So, in hadith from Imam Raza alayhi salam, we have this point. In the meeting that Ma'mun had organized, and he was asking Imam to meet people of different schools of Islam or different religions. So Imam Raza alayhi salam told Ibn Jahm what people who are around you say about Prophet Dawood. This story is mentioned in Uyun Akhbar al-Rida by Sheikh Saduq, and Allama Tabatabai mentions in Al-Mizan, volume 17, page 199 and page 200. Ibn Jahm says the famous or false story. He said, they say, يقولون إن داود كان يصلي في محرابه. Dawood was praying in his place of ibadah, in his mihrab, and Iblis appeared to him in the form of a bird, but a very beautiful bird. تصور له إبليس على صورة طير أحسن ما يكون من الطيور. Very beautiful bird. He was praying in his mihrab. He saw this beautiful bird. فقطع داود صلاته. They say that Dawood then broke his salat, went after this bird, na'uzu billah. And then this bird took, which was Iblis, took him to the roof of the building. He went to the roof of the building after the bird, and then the bird went to the house of Uriah, the son of Hayyan. When Dawood, na'uzu billah, according to this false story, went after the bird to the house of that person, what they say about a prophet of God, even an ordinary person would not go break his salat and then go after the bird, go to the roof, and then go to the house of people without asking for permission. So when Dawood alayhi salam, according to this false story, went to the house of Uriah, they say he saw the wife of Uriah was taking bath, and when he saw her, he desired to marry her, And Uriah at that time had gone to some battles. So he wrote to the commander who was, because he was in charge, he was the king, and he's fighting for him under his supreme control. But unfortunately, they say Prophet Dawood wrote to the commander who was there and said to put him in a difficult situation in front of the Tabut, that enemies would attack and he would be killed. But they say that he was successful, and Prophet Dawood was very upset, so wrote second time that let him be in front of Tabut till he was killed. And then he married wife of Uriah, that he had fallen in love by one look. When Ibn Jam mentioned this idea of people who are in his city, whatever, Hadith says, فَضَرَبَ الرِّضَى عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ يَدَهُ عَلَى جِبْهَتِهِ. Imam Reza was so sad that he hit his forehead, with his hand. وَقَالَ إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. This kalimatu istirja is when someone dies or big catastrophe happens, big calamity. لَقَدْ نَسَبْتُمْ نَبِيًّا مِّنْ أَنْبِيَاءِ اللَّهِ إِلَى التَّهَاوُنِ بِصَلَاتِهِ حَتَّى خَرَجَ فِي إِثْرِ الطَّيْرِ ثُمَّ بِالْفَاحِشَةِ ثُمَّ بِالْقَتْلِ. You are attributing to a prophet, one of the prophets of God, that he broke his salah, so he didn't pay attention to his salat. He underestimated his salat. Then he went after the bird. Then na'udhu billah made affair with wife of someone. Then somehow managed to kill that person's husband. So Ibn Jam said, so what was the khati'ah of Dawood that he asked for forgiveness? فَقَالَ يَا ابْنَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ مَا كَانَتْ خَطِيئَتُهُ. Then Imam said, وَيْحَكَ إِنَّ دَاوُودَ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ إِنَّمَا ظَنَّ أَنَّهُ مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ خَلْقًا هُوَ أَعْلَمُ مِنْهُ. Dawood alayhi salam, not intentionally, but this idea was coming to him that maybe God has not created any person more knowledgeable than him. فَبَعَثَ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَ إِلَيْهِ الْمَلَكَيْنِ. Allah then sent two angels who climbed his mihrab, and they said, خَصْمَانِ بَغَى بَعْضُنَا عَلَى بَعْضٍ فَاحْكُمْ بَيْنَنَا بِالْحَقِّ وَلَا تُشْدِدْ وَحْدَنَا إِلَى سَوَاءِ الصِّرَاطِ إِلَى آخِرِهِ. And Imam says, فَعَجِلَ دَاوُود عَلَى الْمُدَّعَى عَلَيْهِ. Prophet Dawood didn't take his time. He rushed and he didn't ask the person, the other party, مُدَّعَى عَلَيْهِ, because one of them claimed, he was mudda'i, that my brother has done this to me. He wants my one sheep to be added to his 99. Dawood alayhi salam should have given chance to the other party to defend himself. فَعَجِلَ دَاوُودَ عَلَى الْمُدَّعَى عَلَيْهِ فَقَالَ لَقَدْ ظَلَمَكَ بِسُؤَالِ نَعْجَتِكَ إِلَى نَعَاجِهِ وَلَمْ يَسْأَلِ الْمُدَّعِي الْبَيِّنَةَ عَلَى ذَلِكَ ولم يقبل على المدعى عليه فيقول له ما تقول. In such cases, we say al-bayyinatu ala al-mudda'i. He should have asked that person who made this claim to bring evidence, and he should also have given chance to the other person, the munkar, to defend himself if he wants to deny. فَكَانَ هَذَا خَطِيئَةٌ, or هَذَا خَطِيئَةٌ, in the manner of judging. لا ما ذهبتم إليه, not what you say. ألا تسمع الله عز وجل يقول يا داود إنا جعلناك خليفة في الأرض فاحكم بين الناس بالحق إلى آخر الآية. Then he said, Yabna Rasulullah, fama qissatuhu ma'a Uriya. So what was then the whole story about Uriya? Because this is mentioned in, the Bible, and unfortunately over there are things attributed to Prophet Dawood which are not acceptable at all. قال الرضا عليه السلام إن المرأة في أيام داود كانت إذا مات بعلها أو قتل لا تتزوج بعده أبدا. There was something, but not in this way. What was the reality was that they had a custom that if a woman loses her husband either by natural death or murder, this woman could not marry after death of her husband. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided to cancel, of course this was not by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but to cancel this in the society, this false idea, or this anyway, this either was what they have made, or maybe was, I don't know, a kind of temporary thing. So فَأَوَّلُ مَنْ أَبَاحَ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ لَهُ أَنْ يَتَزَوَّجَ بِامْرَأَةٍ قُتِلَ بَعْلُهَا دَاوُودَ. The first person that in that time Allah gave permission to marry to a lady whose husband was killed was Prophet Dawood. So then they fabricated this story that, oh, he fell in love, he sent him to be killed, then he can marry him officially, all these things. This was fabrication. فَتَزَوَّجَ بِامْرَأَةِ أُورِيَا لَمَّا قُتِلَ, after Uriah was killed. وَانْقَضَتْ عِدَّتُهَا, she observed also iddah. Therefore his Imam says that people then fabricated this story. In Amali of Sheikh Saduq also there is a hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and Abi Abdullah alayhi salam. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said, Inna ridha nas la yumlak wa alsinatuhum la tuzbat. Unfortunately, people's tongues cannot be controlled unless they are very careful, very pious, very muttaqi. They say things, rumors have always been there. Alam yansibu Dawood alayhi salam. Imam Sadiq says, as an example, haven't some people attributed to Dawood that annahu taba'at tayr, he followed this bird and then looked at the wife of Uriah and desired, and then sent her husband, to be killed, etc. So Imam Sadiq also mentioned this as an example of rumors, how people, spread rumors. In Farsi, we have a proverb. We say, در دروازه را میتوان بست یا میشود بست، اما زبان مردم را نمیشود بست. In the past, cities used to have gates. Yeah, for protection, there were gates. They could close it and open it when they want to welcome visitors, etc. This is darwaze, gate. Darwaze is very big. Sometimes few people had to push it. But they say we can close the gates of the city, but we cannot close the mouth of people. It means that it's very difficult to make sure that rumors, lies are not spread. Even sometimes, if you say to someone something and he wants to be, truthful, but because of his own mistakes or rushing, etc., when he says to someone else, there is a 10% difference. Then he says, the second says to someone else, then becomes 20% difference. By the time the 10th person receives, there can be lots of differences. This is why our ulama were very careful about narrations of hadith, to write it down and also checking which narrator is reliable, who was good in dhabt, in registration. Okay, this was what I wanted to mention, because you may hear this story. It is also in some sects of Islam. They have also something like this, but we don't believe in this. Now we go to the next part, which is about Prophet Sulaiman ala nabiyina wa alihi wa alayhi salam. I found explanation of Ayatollah Makarim Shirazi for this part to be very clear, straightforward, consistent, and free from problems. So I'm not saying that definitely that's the one, because there are different details here, different explanations, but I found this reasonable and plausible one. So I share what Ayatollah Makarim Shirazi in Tafsir Namuna has said about this part. وَوَهَبْنَا لِدَاوُودَ سُلَيْمَانَ. We gave to Prophet Dawood a son called Sulaiman. نِعْمَ الْعَبْدِ. What a good servant. So he was abd and a good one. So it means a true abd. إِنَّهُ أَوَّابٌ. He was awwab. If you remember, we had also about Prophet Dawood. We said, اصبر على ما يقولون واذكر عبدنا داوود ذا الأيد إنه أواب. Dawood was abd and awwab. Here also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Sulaiman ni'mal abd innahu awwab. He was quickly returning to God. Nothing was diverting him away from God. He was constantly going back to his Lord. This is also a rejection of false accusation about Prophet Dawood and his son Sulaiman. Because unfortunately, those rumors and those false reports about Prophet Dawood, some of them says that Prophet Sulaiman was the child of that affair that na'uzu billah Prophet Dawood had with the wife of Uriah. How can you say such things about even an ordinary believer, let alone someone like Dawood, that Allah says he was given hikmah, faslul khitab, he was good abd, and then Allah made him Khalifatullah. So Allah is defending Dawood, defending Sulaiman. وَوَهَبْنَا لِدَاوُودَ سُلَيْمَانَ نِعْمَ الْعَبْدِ إِنَّهُ أَوَّابٌ. Then here a story starts. Prophet Sulaiman was very good in jihad, in fighting against enemies like his father Dawood, and at that time they had lots of battles, lots of enemies. So for him, having a strong army was very important, and part of a strong army was to have good horses. Horses were important for battles of that time. So one day in Ashi, afternoon, in the afternoon before sunset, some very good horses were brought to Prophet Sulaiman to see. إذ عرض عليه بالعشي الصافنات الجياد. So in the Ashi means before sunset, and late afternoon, for example. عرض عليه, it was presented to him, الصافنات الجياد, horses which were very good, very light-footed, and very fast, some of the best horses for battles. So Prophet Sulaiman was very happy with this, because this could help them in their battles against bad people. He said, فقال إني أحببت حب الخير عن ذكر ربي حتى توارت بالحجاب. Here we have different interpretations. Ayatollah Makarim's interpretation is this, that Prophet Sulaiman, in order to make it clear that he doesn't love horses just as a hobby, or some people have interest in horses, just they like. He said, I love these horses. Khair, in Arabic, khair, although it means goodness, but sometimes it's used for horse, because horse is very good, very beneficial, very nice animal, very blessed animal. So he said, I love these horses and dhikr Rabbi. According to Ayatollah Makarim, maybe next night I will mention another interpretation, but tonight I want to focus on just one interpretation so that it's clear. I don't want to mention contradicting interpretations. According to Ayatollah Makarim Shirazi, it means that he said, I love these horses because of remembrance of my Lord. Because he wanted to use them in jihad, in fighting against enemies of God. So he's explaining that the reason for hubbul khair, for loving these horses, is a dhikr of his Lord. He was seeing the movement of these horses, and he kept looking at them till they disappeared. So tawarat bil hijab, according to this interpretation, is about these horses. So as much as he could see them, he saw them, escorted them with his eyes till they disappeared. Then he said, Rodduha alayya, bring them back. When they brought these horses back, فَطَفِقَ مَسْحًا بِالسُّوقِ وَالْأَعْنَاقِ, then he started kind of touching them, wiping them with his hand. As-suq means their legs, a'naq their necks. As a commander, as someone who is very good in knowing the value of these horses, he wanted to show appreciation and also a kind of thanks to the people who looked after these horses and trained them. So this is about the horses. Then there was a very difficult test for him. I will tomorrow, maybe if you want, I come back to these verses about the horses and mention an alternative interpretation. But I think for tonight, as I said, it's enough. Let's continue. Then there was a test for Sulaiman alayhi salam. وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّا سُلَيْمَانَ, we tested Sulaiman. Everyone has to be tested, and people who are in high position will be having more difficult tests. It is said that Prophet Sulaiman very much wanted to have a strong children who could help in jihad against enemies of God. He had married also different wives and wanted to have children, many children, but he was not having what he wanted. He had only one child from different marriages, and this child was not healthy. One day they brought the child and put on the chair, and it was like a dead body, so weak, so unhealthy, and this was absolutely against what he wanted. He wanted to have many children, many strong warriors, but then he had only this child. This was a big test for him. أَلْقَيْنَا عَلَى كُرْسِيِّهِ جَسَدًا, we put on his chair a body, like a dead body. Prophet Sulaiman went to contemplation, that why he somehow, to some degree, Salaam alaikum. Was it disconnected?
Yes, at some point disconnected after you said, for me anyways, this was the exact opposite of what he had.
Okay. Yeah. So Prophet Sulaiman ala nabiyina wa alayhi salam went to contemplation, started thinking that why I didn't trust Allah, relied on my own plans. This was a big test for him. So he returned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If he was not a person of contemplation and he was not awwab, maybe here would have developed, some kind of, sadness and grief and complaint to Allah, what have you given me, etc. But no, he is munib, he is awwab, he is not complaining, and he realized that indeed it was him who should have only relied on God. So he said, قَالَ رَبِّ اغْفِرْ لِي. He said, my Lord, please forgive me. وَهَبْ لِي مُلْكًا لَا يَنْبَغِي لِأَحَدٍ مِّن بَعْدِي. This is very interesting that when you do tawbah and you return to God, not only you ask for forgiveness, you can ask him also for other things, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is forgiving you and is pleased with you, and that's a time that you can ask for a gift. If you remember, sometimes I have used this example for tawbah to say how our tawbah is surrounded with two returns of God. So sometimes I mention this point, that for example, if a child does something very bad at home and then runs away from home because he's afraid, parents want him to come back because they know if he stays outside it's very bad, dangerous, and he may get into problems, etc. So they send one of the neighbors to speak, and they don't want to talk to him directly. They send an invitation, and the neighbor tells him, go back, and your father, your mother are going to forgive you. They love you. You should stay at home. So the child goes back. So the initiative came from the parents. The Quran says, تَابَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ لِيَتُوبُوا. Allah returned to them so that they return. When the child goes back, then parents welcome him, hug him, and the child, of course, is very sad, starts crying because he knows he did something bad, and now he's overwhelmed with this love of the parents. He starts crying. So the parents now not only would forgive him, but also maybe buy for him something, give him something that he likes to make him feel happy and welcomed. So there is a special attention to the person who repents. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ التَّوَّابِينَ. Allah loves. So Prophet Sulaiman here, he said, رَبِّ اغْفِرْ لِي وَهَبْ لِي مُلْكًا لَا يَنْبَغِي لِأَحَدٍ مِّن بَعْدِي. He said, my Lord, forgive me, and you make me strong. Give me a kingdom that no one after me would have it. لا ينبغي لأحد من بعدي. He was ambitious. It was not that he didn't want others to have it. He wanted to have the best. And the result is, by implication, that then others would be the second to the best, third to the best. So he wanted to have the best. Of course, what was his reason why he wanted mulk? Because he wanted to work for God. He wanted to defeat enemies, to establish the kingdom of God. إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْوَهَّابُ. You are all giver. You give heba. Wahaba and heba are from the same root. Heba was wahaba. like thiqa, which comes from wuthuq, ida comes from wa'd. So you are very much giving, granting presents, gifts. Allah accepted this dua and gave him different things. Ayatollah Makarim mentions 5 things that we can understand from the Quran. First, فَسَخَّرْنَا لَهُ الرِّيحَ تَجْرِي بِأَمْرِهِ رُخَاءً حَيْثُ أَصَابَ. The very first thing that Allah mentions here is that winds were under his control. So, based on his amr, his command, they would gently, rukha'an, go wherever he intended. So, they were very much in control. With the speed that he wanted, they were moving to the direction that he wanted.
Number 2, وَالشَّيَاطِينَ كُلَّ بَنَّاءٍ وَغَوَّاصٍ. Also, we made under his control, so they were musakhar, they were under his control, at his disposal, Satans that were building banna from benaya. So they were building any construction he wanted, and qawwas, who were diving and going to the sea and ocean and maybe bringing for him something from the sea. So these jinns were not only not annoying and hurting, but they were under his control. وآخرين مقرنين في الأسفار. There were some jinns that these were very rebellious and disobedient. They were not benefiting. They were chained up so that they cannot annoy, they cannot, go away. So this also was another thing. Then the 4th is هذا عطاؤنا فمن أو أمسك بغير حساب. Ayatollah Makaram says this means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given lots of things, lots of power to Sulaiman alayhi salam, and says, this is our grant to you, our gift for you. So you can give to whomsoever you want. بغير حساب. You can give, you can keep, it's up to you. Number 5, وَإِنَّ لَهُ عِنْدَنَا لَزُلْفَى وَحُسْنَ مَآبٍ. But in addition to all these things, he has also a spiritual position. He has nearness to God and a good return, good end. So this husna ma'ab, good end, Ayatollah Makaram says, this can be also refutation of what is attributed to Prophet Sulaiman, that he married some, idol worshippers, and because of marrying idol worshippers, he had some tendency towards them, and even made a place for worshipping idols. Now, Can you imagine someone like Suleiman making a place for worshipping idols? Quran is refuting this idea and says he is near to us and he has good return, good end in dunya and akhirah. This is verse 40. From 41, then the story of Prophet Ayub starts. So I stop here, and tomorrow maybe I give you alternative interpretation. But I think what we said, it's very clear, very consistent, and makes lots of sense. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Inshallah, if anybody has any questions, please do ask them directly or send them. We have a question, Sheikh. Now let me take a look. So the question is as follows.
Yes.
When Imam al-Sadiq discusses the types of worshippers, worship is of three kinds. Some people worship Allah because they fear Him, so it is the worship of slaves. And a group worships Allah, blessed and high is He, to seek reward, so it is the worship of hirelings. And a group worship Allah, mighty and great is He, because of His love, and this is the worship of the free, and it is the most excellent worship. Is it accidental that when he mentions fear, he just says Allah, and when he talks about those seeking reward, he says Tabaraka subhanahu wa ta'ala, and when he mentions the worship of the noble, he uses mighty and great as epithets? Or do those descriptions have anything to do with the relationships of these people with Allah? So this was the question.
I don't know. So the question is about the wording or about the whole concept?
I think the Arabic is not there, but it's a very specific question about how when the hadith is there, it narrates first when it says people who worship Allah, there's no Azza wa Jal, there's no Jalla Jalaluhu, it's just Allah. And then after that, when it's those who worship as for the sake of Jannah, then it says Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And then when it says worships Allah for himself or out of his love, it says Azza wa Jal. So is there any correlation in that hadith based on the levels of worship?
I have to see the Arabic.
Mm-hmm. This is a very detailed question. We have another one. This question says the following. In Sheikh's paper, Understanding the Mercy of God, it says that we are not punished for bad intentions, but don't they have an ill effect on our soul? And isn't it a punishment? And
for
isn't...
example, sorry,
Yes.
What I found now, for example...
Oh, you found the Arabic.
Yeah. For example, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, قوم عبدوا الله عز وجل خوفا فتلك عبادة وقوم عبدوا الله تبارك وتعالى طلب فتلك عبادة وقوم عبدوا الله عز وجل. So in all of them, there is no Allah only. Always comes with some...
There's a description for each.
Description.
Thank you, that was helpful. I'll continue with the second question, which is about understanding the mercy of God. It says that we are not punished for bad intentions, but don't they have an ill effect on our soul? Sure. And isn't it a punishment? Isn't it how punishment for actions work as well? Could you explain the difference? So basically, somebody who has bad intention, it has an ill effect, and that is the punishment. And other acts have ill effects, and that is the punishment. So is there really a difference? Can we say that we're not punished for bad intentions?
What we mean by punishment here, punishment the hereafter. So if someone has made bad niyyah but didn't act upon it, normally bad niyyah is not punished in the hereafter. Even if he has not done tawbah, he's not punished. But this doesn't mean that it doesn't cause darkness in the heart, for example. But this is not punishment. We mean by punishment here, punishment the hereafter.
Thank you very much. We're having lots of thank yous coming through here on the chat, and a request to continue to interpret all the chapters of the Quran in this way from one of the users. There's a follow-up, but sister, if you can go directly, that would be helpful. We're not live anymore. If you're comfortable.
I think the question is that, don't we come to Allah with this darkness? Yes, if we don't amend this, yes. So anything that we fail to remember God, this will be something for which we will regret. But there is no punishment. In dua we say, Astaghfirullah or Astaghfiruka likulli ladhatin bighayri dhikrik. Any pleasure we had in dunya which was not in line with remembrance of Allah, is something that for which we should ask forgiveness. It would affect us, but it's not something that someone because of that would go to hell or would be punished in the hereafter. It's like something that would reduce our speed, something that would make us heavy so we cannot move fast. It's like this.
Thank you very much. The last question for tonight is, how can we look at the story of Sulaiman based on what we have heard from him, and how would that be a consolation to the Prophet ﷺ in his context? Similar to how we saw for Prophet Dawood alayhi salam.
Yeah, so this shows that, like we said before, that the prophets had lots of difficulties, but still their main challenge is how thoughts, their own desires, and be always mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to be always returning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is greatest jihad. Your greatest enemy is not the enemy outside. Your greatest enemy is nafsuka allati bayna jambayk. And prophets were very successful because they defeated that internal enemy. Sometimes they defeated external enemies, sometimes they didn't manage to defeat the external enemy, but they always defeated the internal enemy.
Thank you very much for that, Sheikhna. We, I think, are done for the questions. Inshallah, if you have any final words or du'as at this time.
There is a comment about interpreting all the chapters of the Quran in this way. So, inshallah, with your du'as, if Allah gives such a great honor, it will be very important and blessing, inshallah, for me. I love, inshallah, to do more on the Quran, inshallah.
Inshallah, Sheikhna, with your permission, can I make one comment, please?
Yes, sure.
We are very grateful for what you are giving us, Sheikhna. Thank you very much, as always. Cannot say enough thanks to you, but I also want to add my thanks to the reciters of the Quran, Brother Abu Hussein, we are used to in other classes, and also Brother Mubarak and Brother Mustafa Al-Divani for brightening up your lessons before you come in with their beautiful recitation of the Quran. Thank you to them.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
Allah.
May Allah bless all of reciters and listeners and those who ask questions, those who take notes, and those who do mubahisa.
And those who give lectures as well.
Inshallah.
Thank you very
Okay.
much, Sayyid Amran. Inshallah, we're always happy to be at your service.
Okay, we end with dua faraj. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. Oh Allah, please give shifa to all people who are ill. Please give shifa to the ill persons in our KLC family, people who have asked us to pray for them or for their ill people, and any ill person in any part of the world. Please give them shifa. Please give them chance to be back to normal life with their families. Please give them a new extension to their lives. Please send your rahmah and maghfirah to all mu'min and mu'minat who have passed away, especially those who have rights upon us. And please make our connection with the Quran and with your Hujjah, Sahibul Amr, stronger and stronger. And enable us to enter Laylatul Qadr with open hearts, open minds, and with our a'mal being pleasing to you, our du'as being listened by you. And please keep our children, our youngsters, always on the right path. Let them be always the source of joy and honor for us in dunya and akhirah. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Thank you very much, Sheikh Al-Kareem, and we look forward to tomorrow. Please keep us in your du'as tonight. I know it's time for suhoor soon for you, so your du'as are very special for all of us.
Thank you. May Allah bless all of you. Thank you.
Fi amanillah.
Ya Allah wa hifzah.